Hey, it's your tutor Courtney Waterman, lover of anime, manga, and math. And this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Courtney, and this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai. Today we're going to be doing some 9th grade solving linear equations. Some of you might know it as solve for x, find a, whatever letter they use, it's all the same thing. So today we're going to be doing some introduction to solving linear equation. Let's jump right in. So the first question we're going to do today is going to be number 11 that you see on the screen. It says 2 plus a over 4 equals negative 1. All right, so 2 plus a over 4 equals negative 1. So we're going to write that like 2 plus a over 4 equals negative 1. So when we're solving linear equations, or solving for x, or solving for a in this case, there's only one thing you really want to do. If you can remember that, then you're halfway there. Whenever we want to solve for a letter, we want to try to move everything else but that letter to the other side of the equal sign. So you see on this side of the equal sign, we have 2 plus a over 4. On this side of the equal sign, we have negative 1. So, in order to solve for a, or any other letter it may be, we want to keep a on this side and move everything else to this side. So how do you do that? You might be kind of confused. If you know, great. If you don't know, let me show you. The very first thing you want to do is see if anything is attached to your letter. So in this case, we want to see if anything is attached to A. What do I mean by attached? What I mean is there any multiplication or division happening with A? You see, in this case, A over 4 means that there's some division happening with A. So if there's division happening with A, we want to leave A alone right now. We'll come back to A. If A was by itself, perfect. But since there's division happening with A, or if there were multiplication happening with A, we want to leave that for almost last. So now that we've determined that A, we're going to leave that for right now, we look to see if anything on this side is either added or subtracted from our A. So in this case, we see we have a 2 that's added to our a over 4. So the first thing we're going to do is try to get 2 to that side. So you see 2 is on this side. We want the 2 to be on this side. Now we can't just say, all right, well, get rid of that 2 and put a 2 here. We can't do that. So we got to do it in such a way where it makes sense. So how do we remove a 2 from this side? Well, that's a positive 2. So how do you cancel out a positive 2? You subtract 2. So we're going to subtract 2, right? So 2 minus 2 gives you 0. So it's going to look 0 plus a over 4. Now, if I wrote equals negative 1, is this the same question as this up here? Like, is this the same as this? No, because here we have 2, here we have 0. This is no longer the same equation. Yes, I can solve this equation, but it's not the same one that they gave us. So to make sure we're not changing the equation that they give us, we want to make sure we do the same thing that we did on this side of the equation to this side of the equation. So if we subtracted 2 from here, we're going to subtract 2 from here. So 2 minus 2 gave us 0 on this side. Then we're going to do -1 minus 2 on this side. So you see, now, whatever you did to one side, you're going to do to the other side. We did -2 on this side. We're going to put a -2 on this side. So, now that we have 0 plus a over 4, whenever you add anything to 0, you just get whatever you're adding it to, equals, what's -1 minus 2? Well, we're getting even more negative. So that becomes a -3. Great job. All right, so remember when I said, see if anything is attached to our A. If something is attached to our A with multiplication or division, we want to wait. That is a rule of thumb that's going to help you. Before you can touch this A, because it has a 4 attached to it, we have to get rid of all the addition and subtraction on this side. After you get rid of all the addition and subtraction on this side, now you can focus on the multiplication and division on this side. Remember, the end goal is to get A by itself. So I just rewrote everything, just shrank it a little bit just so we can have a little bit more space. Now that we have A over 4 equals -3, we have to get A by itself once again. Another way of writing this is A multiplied by 1 over 4 equals -3. So how do we get rid of this 1 over 4? You might remember earlier we looked at this 2 and we subtracted 2 from it. That was using identities. The additive identity. Whenever we add 0, we get itself, right? So we want to make this into a 0 so that we can add this 0 to this and get this back. Well, we can't use the additive identity here because this is a multiplication. So we want to use the multiplicative identity. Additive identity is 0. What is the multiplicative? So if additive identity means you add this to your number and you get that number back, multiplicative identity would mean if you multiply this by your number, you get your number back. So what do you multiply by a number to get the same number? 1. So the additive identity is 0. The multiplicative identity is 1. So in this case, we want to get the additive identity since we're adding this. In this case, we want to get the multiplicative identity since we're multiplying. So what's the multiplicative identity in this situation? If we're going to try to get 1/4 to look like 1, what do we have to do to this? Well, we multiply by its reciprocal. 4 over 1, or just 4. When you do this, you get 4 times 1 over 1 times 4, 4 over 4, 1. So, whenever we're trying to get the multiplicative identity here, we can just multiply by the reciprocal of whatever is here. So, in this case, that means we're going to multiply both sides by 4. A times 1 over 4 equals 4. And we already know that 4 times 1 over 4 gives us 1. So A times 1 gives us A. And what is 4 times negative 3? Negative 12. Wow, that was a lot. If you were confused at any step, don't worry. Don't worry. We have a lot more questions that we're going to do. And we're going to go through it step by step. So if you're confused, just sit back and enjoy the ride. So one thing I like to do whenever I do math is I like to check my work. Check my work. So I challenge you, when you're done solving an equation, take your answer. The answer we found was A equals negative 12. But let's make sure it really is true. So we have our original question, 2 plus A over 4 equals negative 1. So let's plug in what our A equals. So that's going to be 2 plus negative 12 over 4, put that in parentheses, equals negative 1. Now negative 12 over 4 is just negative 12 divided by 4. And what's negative 12 divided by 4? Well, that's going to be negative 3. And what's 2 plus a negative 3? Well, 2 plus a negative 3 is negative 1. And does negative 1 equal negative 1? Correct. So whenever you're done solving an equation, I challenge you, if you have time, if it's homework, definitely. If you're on a test, maybe you won't have time to do this, but if you do, it will help you a lot. If you just take a little bit more time, plug in your number, and just make sure it makes sense. All right, so that is the first question. So let us look at another question. Okay, so now we're going to go and look at number 12. It says 3n minus 4 equals 11. 3n minus 4 equals 11. So we're going to write that. 3n minus 4 equals 11. So remember, we want to see if our letter is attached to anything. And by attach, once again, we mean through multiplication or division. In this case, we have some multiplication happening. So we're going to save this for later. Let's look to see if there's any other addition or subtraction on this side of the equation. Well, yeah, we have this minus 4 here. So we're going to work on that first and work on that to get it to this side. And remember the additive identity, we want to make sure that we're going to add 0 to 3n. So we make sure we get 3n on this side by itself. Make this into an additive identity, which is 0. How do we do that? Well, if we have a minus 4, how do we make a minus 4 into a 0? We're going to add 4 to it. So if we add 4, we get 0. Right? And whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. So if you add a 4 to this side, and remember, you only have to do it once. It's once per side. So if you add 4 to this side, you're going to add 4 to this side. 11 plus 4 is 15. So now we're going to rewrite this with our new numbers. 3n stays the same. We didn't touch it. This minus 4, we added 4 to it, so now we have 0. So plus 0. This 11, we added 4, so now we have 15. So we write 15 here. So once again, we start with 3n minus 4 equals 11. We want to get this n by itself, but we can't touch this just yet. We got to start with this. Any addition or subtraction has to go first. Okay? We start with this, and we want to make this a 0. So we add 4. Since negative 4 get canceled out, with a positive 4. But we can't just change the equation, so we have to make sure we balance both sides. Whatever you do to this side, you do to this side. So if we add 4 here, we're going to add 4 here. Negative 4 plus 4 gives us 0. 11 plus 4 gives us 15. This is how we get our new equation. All right? And 3n plus 0 is just 3n. So we can just write it as 3n equals 15. Unlike before where there was the division happening, we have multiplication happening. But we're going to treat it the same way. If you remember our previous example, we multiplied by the reciprocal. So what's the reciprocal of 3? Perfect. 1/3. And whatever you do to one side, we do to the other. 1/3. So if this is the reciprocal of 3, if 1/3 is the reciprocal of 3, that means that when you multiply them together, you get 1. So 1n equals 15 over 3. And what's 15 over 3? 5. 15 divided by 3 is 5. So our answer is n equals 5. But remember, we said we want to make sure we check our work. So let's plug this in. If our equation was 3n minus 4 equals 11, then 3 times 5 minus 4 equals 11. 3 times 5, 15 minus 4 equals 11. 15 minus 4, 11 equals 11. Checks out. So now we know that n does indeed equal 5. All right, so let's look into a slightly more complicated one. Don't worry, we'll go step by step. In case you get lost, feel free to pause the video, rewind as many times as you need. Take your time. Math needs a lot of practice. A lot of practice. So don't get discouraged if it doesn't happen right away. Okay, so if you look here, we're going to start with number 26. So like I said, it's a little bit different from what we just did, but we're going to use our same principles. We're going to use our same principles, okay? So number 26 says, y minus 4 all over 2 equals 10. Y minus 4 all over 2 equals 10. So let's write that. Y minus 4 all over 2 equals 10. Now, you might say, okay, well, Courtney, you told me if there's anything attached, there's something attached here, so let's focus on here. That's not necessarily going to work here. And I'm not saying that what I said was necessarily wrong, but this is special because this y is kind of attached to everything here, right? It's kind of attached to everything. Now, you can easily break this up. Y over 2 minus 4 over 2 equals 10. That's something you can do, and then you can follow the same rules. Focus on this a little bit later. Start here, but we're going to do something slightly different. Slightly different. So you don't have to worry about taking that extra step. I have another rule for you. So remember, if it looks like some number times or some number divided by, right? Then we hold off and we look for either addition or subtraction. However, whenever we have something that looks like this, in which you have some subtraction or adding all over another number, well then, before we can touch the numerator, we have to get rid of the denominator. Okay? So that's the other rule. The first rule, A attached, then you focus on addition. But if you have something all over a number, well, you can't touch this until you get rid of the bottom. Don't worry, like I said, you can always break this up. Y over 2 minus 4 over 2. And then stay with the same things that we did in the first two examples. But if you can remember this rule, you can go from this to something like this. So now we have y minus 4 times 1/2. So what's the reciprocal of 1/2? Because remember, we're multiplying, so we have to look at the multiplicative identity. We want to make this a multiplicative identity. So what's the reciprocal of 1/2? 2. So we multiply 2 by both sides. So 2 times 1/2 gives us the 1 that we're expecting. And then 2 times 10 gives us 20 over here. If you can remember the rule that if there's any addition or subtraction with our letter over another number, then we have to hold on to our top part, our numerator, and then remove the denominator. Hold on to our numerator and remove the denominator. So now we have y minus 4 times 1, and anything times 1 is itself, equals 20. So we can rewrite this as y minus 4 equals 20. Are we done? No. We still haven't gotten y by itself. The last thing you have to do here is get y by itself. We have this negative 4 here. Well, what is the additive identity we're shooting for? 0. 0. So how do we get a 0 out of this? How do we cancel this out? By adding 4 to both sides. Adding 4 to both sides. So, let's go up here. We have y minus 4 plus 4 equals 20 plus 4. That gives us a 0, additive identity. This gives us 24. So our final answer is y equals 24. Y equals 24. So let's do a quick recap, because that was all over the place. It was very different from what we just did, and I don't want you getting too lost. So now we still have everything here. Let us recap before we erase anything. So we start with here. Y minus 4 over 2 equals 10. If we don't want to break this up, but we want to do the special rule of, since this is over a number, we're going to focus on removing that bottom number first. We look at this and we rewrite it like this. Y minus 4 times 1/2. Because this is the same as this, just broken out. Now to remove this 1/2, using or aiming for the multiplicative identity of 1, to cancel this out, we have to multiply by a 2. So to cancel out 1/2, we multiply by a 2. 2 times 1/2 gives us 1. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So 2 times 10 gives us 20. So now we have y minus 4. Remember, we got our 1 from these two multiplied together. Gives us 1 equals the 20 that we got. 1 times anything is going to give you what you're multiplying by. So we still have y minus 4. So now we rewrite it as y minus 4 equals 20. And let's move up here. How do we cancel this negative 4 out? Well, we're shooting for the additive identity of 0. To cancel this out, to make it go to 0, we have to add 4. And whatever we do to one side, we do to the other side. So, y minus 4, we add a 4, so now it becomes y plus 0. Y plus 0 is just y. Now we do 20 plus 4 equals 24. So, on one side you have y, on the other side you have 24. Y must equal 24. But we're not done yet. Let us check our answer. We got a little time, so let's check our answer. If y equals 24, then we plug 24 into here. 24 minus 4 all over 2 equals 10. So we do this first. 24 minus 4 gives us 20 over 2 equals 10. And what's 20 over 2? Well, that is just 10, which equals 10. There we go. Our answer is correct. Y does indeed equal 24. Great job, everybody. Great job. So that concludes another session of Tutor Me Senpai, in which today we did 9th grade solving linear equations, or solve for A, solve for B, solve for C, whatever letter you want to throw in there, you solve for that missing letter. So if anything was confusing, I challenge you to go over the video again. It was a lot of information, and math can sometimes be confusing at the first try. But don't worry, don't get discouraged. If this is hard, don't worry. Keep practicing. Math needs a lot of practice. I've said it before, and I'll continue to say it again. If you keep working hard, if you keep practicing, eventually it'll come to you. So if you like this video, if this helped in any way, leave a like, leave a message, hit that notification bell, subscribe. You'll get more of these videos every week. But most importantly, watch the video again, and then again, and then again, and then again. And practice along with me. And then before you know it, you'll be a pro at this. I'm Courtney, and this is another session of Tutor Me Senpai.